Oh, guys, good, you hear? I am so excited. Guess what? I hope this isn't about your podcast again. Why, did you finally listen to it?
Da 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 da, da 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 da, da 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 da. The Gloomy Next Door production.
The 1970s and 80s had Elbow, Gravy Train, Purina, Meow Mix, and Bell Bottoms. You've changed your clothes, now change how you feed your pet. Like Bell Bottoms, kick the kibble and join us in the 21st century with the healthiest diet for dogs and cats. Feed naturally, feed raw, feed fishing foods.
The Groomer Next Door podcast.
Dun, 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 dun.
Hello, pups and kittens, and welcome to another fun-filled and informative episode of the Groomer Next Door podcast. I'm your host, Chris Green, and joining us this week is a really cool cat. His name is Isaiah Ramos, and he has an amazing company called LICKS. LICKS, well, it is exactly what it sounds like, and an absolute cool concept, and something that I was really digging when I was talking to him. Before we actually get started, let's go into our fact of the week. Now, I always like to kind of tailor our facts around our guest. And you know, it's funny because I always say the same thing about dogs and cats in reference to people. How a lot of dogs and a lot of cats work harder than a lot of people, which always makes me sad. But because we're actually talking about honey, and we're talking about bees, obviously, I thought we would tailor it to the whole bee kind of fact. So, did you know that honeybees work harder than a lot of people? During chillier seasons, worker bees can live for 9 months. But in the summer, they rarely last longer than 6 weeks. They literally work themselves to death. Shocking. Shocking and hard to believe, and yet realistically, why we have such an issue with bees and colonies. And, we're going to go into that in just a moment when Isaiah gets here. Absolute cool concept. I love what they're doing to actually help out. And, it's definitely something I hope all of you take a look at. You can definitely check out more in our description page of LICKS. I'll have a whole list of things in there. By that sound, Isaiah is about to step into the podcast studio. So, with that said, welcome Isaiah Ramos from LICKS to the podcast.
Oh, hello. Hold on a sec. Dad, we have a guest on the podcast.
This week on the podcast, we are joined by a very entertaining guy. I mean, we've been talking before we started recording, as we do on every episode, but we've been having a blast and then realized we probably should record. Joining me this week is Isaiah Ramos. He has an amazing company called LICKS. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It has absolutely been, again, we've been having a great time, kicking around ideas and different things that we've been talking about and technology. And so it's really fun to be able to talk to somebody who shares in the same things that I share in and interest and can talk about it, but also loves dogs, which is, of course, one of my favorite pastimes, with whether it's work or whatever.
Oh, yeah, of course. Always. I'm petting my dog right now. Right, buddy?
And see, I have a rescue in the back seat, Freckles, which I think Freckles is actually asleep. Yep, Freckles is asleep, which is a 5-week-old puppy, which was dumped. So I'm surprised it's not barking right now, because that's what he likes to do if he's in his kennel. But, so LICKS, tell us, I was telling you this before, I love the origin story to everything. Tell us the origin story behind LICKS.
All right. Well, it's a little bit long, so bear with me.
That's fine.
So it all started back when I was in high school, if you can believe it. I went to a weird high school, and I was taking an environmental chemistry class. We had to do presentations on things that of chemistry related, but of course pertains to the environment specifically. You couldn't do the chemistry of aerosol cans or something unless you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So one girl, she actually owned a farm, like her family was from a farm, and she did thing about the bees and how climate change was directly affecting her family's personal bees. Then went on to talk about how like they were like dying off, the colony class disorder was really affecting them. And that kind of always stuck with me because she was really passionate about it. Um, Fast forward to when I go to college, I eventually settled on becoming a bioengineer. I got accepted to U of I for agricultural and biological engineering, which it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, but once I got to see like you could work stuff with biofuels, I was kind of content with it. Eventually, however, my family I couldn't really afford to finish college. My family's not really wealthy or anything. So I took some time off to focus on work, save up some money to get back to school. And during that time, I started watching a lot of Shark Tank. I saw like all these cool ideas and gadgets and stuff, and I figured, I think like the bottom line for me was that I saw an episode where this guy literally had a business where he just mailed potatoes, and he got a deal, and they're making like tons of money.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I was like, what? Maybe there's something I should do. Like maybe I can come up with something myself. Then it kind of like occurred to me. Peanut has this issue. That's my dog Peanut. He's a little Chihuahua. Funny story there. I wanted a husky, but Mom said no. I'm not taking care of that because I was still in high school. So I was like, okay, fine. So she got the Chihuahua for herself. And before I could pick my dog, he ended up liking me more than her. So now he's with me. But anywho, he has this problem. He's a bit of an older dog, and he lost his teeth. He has all but two teeth, or excuse me, he lost most of his teeth. He only has two teeth remaining. So like all the little bones and stuff that I used to give him to chew on, he can't chew them anymore. Like literally, he gets tired of trying after a few minutes. He could barely handle an apple slice if I give him one. So he had this habit of licking me all the time. Of like me and my roommates ever trying to like watch TV or play a video game, and just got to a point where you really couldn't ignore him, or you couldn't focus on what you were doing. I had already been trying to play around with this idea of like a lickable treat for him, because when I looked up online, like if it had already existed, what I had found had issues, kind of like what we were talking about before we started the podcast, where there was just like a lot of health issues with all the food and treats they were already putting out. One treat, I'm not going to name the competitor specifically, but their treat specifically has formaldehyde in it, which is the stuff you would use for, preserving bodies and other organic materials. It was like, why is that in a dog treat? Like, I wouldn't want to eat that,
Right.
So, but yet, it's perfectly accepted, and like so I was like, no, I'm not giving that to Peanut. And after doing more research, I found that like raw honey is good for dogs, and on top of that, can be used as like a sort of a substitute for making like a hard candy. So I kind of played around with the idea of making like a lollipop for dogs, and through trial and error, it kind of ended up becoming honey lick. Now, like that was me personally. I'm not a chef or anything. I couldn't finalize the recipe because I got really close, but I don't have the expertise, if you will. Eventually, I met my current business partner, Kim, who is a candy maker and pastry chef. And after I spun the idea with her, she bought some honey herself, played around with it, and she got it to what it is now. So that's kind of how we got started. That's where we are now. Our treat is like I could describe it as kind of like a hard taffy. Like if you push your finger on it, it'll give, but you can shake it around and it won't jiggle or anything. Yeah, and like when we were going for that lollipop consistency, we found that like if we really wanted to, we could do it, but we'd have to add artificial stiffeners to like get it to that texture, and we felt like we didn't want to do that, so we decided to like just work around this like hard taffy texture and just go with it from there.
Interesting. Yeah, because on the website I looked at the display, and it almost kind of had if you think about Carmax, the lip gel, that's kind of what it looks like. And I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense. So they can just, lick it, kind of like a Rain Pop, if you would.
Exactly.
But same concept in my mind. I'm like, okay, Rain Pop meets Carmax kind of thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's something we were playing around with too. when we were trying to when we decided not to add artificial stiffeners, that we're like, well, okay, but what if we keep it like gel-like almost, and then we could put it in a tube, kind of like a Carmax or like a push pop almost. But we started finding like the honey, if we don't put it in like a tight container, it'll start seeping through any little crack that it can get into. So when we tried the push pops, and that was a disaster. it got everywhere. So it's like, okay, this isn't gonna work. And then I think she tried the Carmax tube, but you had to squeeze really hard, and it just kind of defeated the purpose.
Right.
So we just kind of settled on putting it in a bowl, and then all the consumer has to do is take the bowl off, and the dog just licks it right out of the bowl.
Simple, and yet it's funny whenever you think about this, and everybody I've ever talked to, it's the simplest answer that they've come up to, but they've had to go through phase after phase to get to this point. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. And we tried playing around what if we kept it cold, and then that kind of worked, but then okay, but most dog stores don't have refrigerators.
Right.
Okay, we can't, and then it's not going to stay cold when we ship it to your door. So it's just we went through a lot of trial and error, a lot of frustration, so we finally got something that worked.
Well, at least you got something that works.
Right, of course, it was the most simple thing we could have done the entire time.
I've found that, again, that's exactly what everybody says. It's yeah, the outcome was the easiest thing ever, and yet we went the extreme. We tried everything that was going to be complicated, that didn't work, and then once we went to the simplest, that's what worked. Figure that out.
Yeah, go figure.
Right. So what are some benefits of honey with dogs?
So, surprisingly enough, well, I guess it shouldn't be surprising, because if you think about it, we should be eating the same things as dogs. So the benefits that we get out of honey also affect our dogs as well, which is to say that raw honey, which is, I do have to note, we make it a point to use raw, unfiltered honey in our treats, not the kind you would get from Walmart or Costco, because those kinds of honeys you would find at those kinds of stores are typically filtered out and then heated to a point where all those healthy benefits, which I'll get to in a second, are destroyed or taken out entirely. Raw honey has particles from the pollen and the flowers that the bees collect that can boost your immunity to seasonal allergies. On top of that, raw honey in and of itself is really good for healing scratches, wounds. I actually was speaking to a vet back when I was still in the early phases of all this. I believe he was based in Kentucky. I haven't spoken to him in a while. Who really liked our treat because he daily uses raw honey for whenever a dog gets a flesh wound or some kind of bite or something, because it acts as a natural, not only as a natural Band-Aid, but those little particles that help fight seasonal allergies, as well as they also help clean infections. So any little infection that dog could have had during the accident starts getting cleared away before he has to start actually applying the real treatment. And then the funny thing about that is as well, if you eat raw honey, and it does the same thing for dogs, it's actually been shown to correct any bacterial what's the word? When things aren't on the right levels. I'm blanking on the word right now, but you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
It can correct that, kind of like eating yogurt would correct the bacteria in your gut, and it'll flush out any bad bacteria that's in there, or try to replace it with some good bacteria. So that way, you're not going to be constipated. You're not going to be having heartburn as often. It's really good for that as well.
Something else I saw, and when I was doing some research on this, it is supposed to help with, and something that a lot of people don't realize is the common cold for dogs, but kennel cough.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's interesting.
Well, I can't personally advocate that our treats will help with that. I have Peanut definitely does have seasonal allergies, and he sneezes a lot in the spring and summer. Thankfully, that's the extent of it. But ever since I started giving him these treats, he does not have these violent sneezes as often as he used to. So that's something I personally have noticed. And yeah, definitely, it's just the whole old wives saying, whenever you get a cough, make some tea, put a little bit of lemon and honey in it. That's exactly why. It really helps with soothing those vocal cords in your throat. And same thing with drugs. It just goes back to the whole, like, it's just as simple as you would have thought, like it works for me. Why not for my dog,
That's true. That is true. Now, funny, you mentioned Shark Tank earlier. We were going to talk about it. So let's go into that whole process. Now, you went through the process to actually be on Shark Tank. So take us through that moment, those steps, and where you ended up.
Oh, yeah. So that was a real fun process. So, at the time, we were just getting our first big order. They initially asked about doing 5,000 treats. And we were just like, oh, yeah, let me just talk to my partner. And we had no idea what to do. We were like, we cannot afford to create this order. We were kind of scrambling. We eventually took on a small investor. But before we solidified that deal with that investor, we decided to just, throw everything out we could, see what stuck to the wall. And I decided to fill out the application for Shark Tank and just emailed it to them, through the email process. Again, so we did that, and then we got to deal with the investor, and everything just started kind of working out. We had to renegotiate how many treats that company wanted. Things are going smoothly. It's a Friday here. It's 6 o'clock, in the evening. I just got home from my day shift at work. I sit down at my desk. I'm about to relax, and I get a phone call. I answer it, and it's like, hi, this is Jackie from Shark Tank. How are you doing? I literally stood up so fast. I banged my knee against my desk, which like scared Peanut, so he started barking and just like, shush, be quiet, like, not right now. And basically it was just like a little 10-minute interview, just like, asking, why do you like your business? Like, what made you start it, blah, blah, kind of what we're doing now. And she ended up with saying, okay, I'm going to send you an email. I'm going to move you to the next round, which was, I had to fill out, it was crazy. Like, it was like 80 pages worth of paperwork. And it was supposed to, everyone involved in the business had to do their own. And so that was just, the fun thing about our business is that I live in Illinois, but my partner Kim lives in, Utah.
Oh.
So, yeah, we make it work, it's fine, but, all our treats are shipped from Utah. And she uses, like, local, Utah honey, which is actually great, apparently. That's where most of the honey in the country comes from, apparently, that in Michigan. So we got good deals because of that. But anywho, so it's like, all right, I need, the hard part was all the paperwork had to be handwritten. Yeah, so it was just, and she gave me a week to do it. So it was like, okay, Kim, fill this out and I guess fax it to me. I don't know. Like, cause you can't really do an email, cause then by the time I get it, like, I don't know, like, it was complicated. There was a video process as well. But we got it done. We, like, somehow barely, like, by the skin of our teeth, made it in. And then it was just a waiting game at that point, but we eventually found out that we did not make it to the last round. I think it was in August, which is fine. Because at that point, like, the big order was done, like, the stress of it was over, and I was just like, you know what, honestly, that's okay. I just need to take a break for a weekend.
It's funny, we had Brandon Zavala, who actually is the creator of Apollo Peak, on. And it's now Apollo Peak Pet Beverage. It was Apollo Peak Wine. And the first time he came on, he couldn't tell us that he had done Shark Tank. It wasn't until a few months later that I found out. And he told these great stories about it. And down to the stress that goes into it, and even the whole process. So I'm always intrigued by Shark Tank, and especially a business like yours. And I would have asked, have you thought about doing Shark Tank already? That was on my list of things I was going to ask. So it's just kind of funny that you're like, yeah, went through the process. It's grueling.
Yeah. I could totally identify too. And that was the other thing too. Like, the entire time that was all happening, like, they do make you sign a non-disclosure agreement. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't tell anyone. Like I told my mom and a few very close friends, and that's it.
Yeah.
Because they made it very clear you can't talk about this. Now, of course, not that I didn't get on, it doesn't matter. But it's just, there's still some things I don't think I'm allowed to talk about the process, but I mean, whatever. But yeah, it was very, very stressful. Like, anytime anytime my phone would ring, I would have a mini heart attack. Like, oh, I say, oh, blah, blah, blah. And it was like, hi, this is, have you thought about getting a getaway to the Bahamas? Like, no, stop talking to me. Like, please stop calling me. Over and, oh my God, I remember one time I literally, like was spasming because it said like Los Angeles, California when they called me. And it was just, again, another, telemarketer. Like, I almost threw my phone against the wall.
That's kind of funny because, I mean, I thought they always, and I just know for some of them, I thought they filmed in Chicago. So I figured it was there.
No, apparently they have a set in Hollywood.
Huh.
Which is, yeah, like, I mean, which is kind of cool because I have the address to that now because I need to have that to send all my materials.
Right.
Again, they want it handwritten. So, like, that's, so every once in a while, whenever I'm, like this last couple of months, I've been kind of stressed out, kind of, like, because this was the first year we, like, had sales, so I had to figure out our taxes. So that was really, like, really stressing me out for a while. But, like, every time I really, like, felt like I needed a break or whatever, I would just pull up my phone and be like, I have the phone number for Shark Tank. Like, I have one of the office phone numbers. I have this address. You're going to be okay. Just keep going. So for as much stress as it gave me, it also gave me more motivation.
But this doesn't mean that you can't go back and reapply.
Oh, of course not. So, the contact that I had, she had even said that, like, most people don't make it this far, on their first try. Like, usually they don't even get a call back.
Wow.
So for us to make it that far in our first try, she, like, encouraged us to keep trying. Because usually people do have to try a few times. So which is why, like, we're actually going to go through the process of starting over again. We're going to do it in a couple of weeks. Right now we're trying to finish some paperwork to introduce our next, treat. We were trying to shoot for January, but Illinois is giving us some trouble with the paperwork. So unfortunately that's slowing us down a little bit.
Yeah. It's very difficult to do anything that has to do with pet food, pet treats, pet beverage. I'm hearing just a great deal of rumblings through the states that they're being almost impossible to work with. And that's kind of sad.
Yeah. I mean, like, so as I mentioned earlier, Kim's in Utah, I'm in Illinois. When we were trying to figure out where we wanted to base the business, it came to, like, when I was looking at Utah, to start the business and, finalize it, after all was said and done, it cost about $92, if I'm remembering correctly. Here in Illinois, just to start the process, cost $500.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just before we even got any, like, licenses or anything. Like, overall, it was going to cost about $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I have to give them credit. Utah's been surprisingly, they worked well with us. Anytime we had a question or email, like, someone from their tax bureau, they've been very, very helpful. So I have to give it up. Props to Utah. They've been very nice to us. Illinois, however, has just been a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. And, Illinois is the only thing holding us back from introducing our next treat, which is going to be a raw honey peanut butter.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. Funny story about that. We kept running into an issue where, our customers who had big dogs, who had ordered it for their big dogs, they liked our treat so much, they tried to eat the bowl that it came with.
Oh, no.
It was like, okay, we can't have that. We can't have the puppies eating, they can't eat the plastic. That's not good.
No.
So we're trying to do the honey peanut butter, so they still get the benefits of the raw honey, but then they can put the peanut butter in the Kong for the dogs.
Very smart. That is really smart. And that was going to be one of my questions, down the road was what was, in the future. Currently, you have bacon honey lick, which it sounds delicious.
It's very good. I've eaten it. It's good.
And see, that's what's always great about this, is that I know it's human grade, and you're able to eat it because it's human grade.
Exactly.
And then you have your plain, which is, again, it's honey, so, I mean, there you go. But bacon, was that a secondary idea, or was that your first one that you launched with?
Well, we were going to originally launch with 3 flavors, but then we discussed it and realized, like, having too much variety at once can kind of really stretch us out too thin in terms of having to buy all the ingredients. Like, we're really working with pennies here. Like, we're very much struggling to just keep the business afloat. Well, not anymore. Thanks now that we got that big orders coming through the company. But this is back then. So we originally wanted to launch with honey roasted peanut, honey vanilla, which we did launch with, but it turned the vanilla price rose too high and just wasn't economical to keep that. So now it's just plain honey. And honey bacon was the third one as well. And of the trials, like we couldn't get honey roasted peanuts worked out without it being just peanut butter at that point. So we decided to just like table that until we were ready to add another treat. And we just ran with the vanilla and the bacon for a while. Bacon easily sold the most for the longest time. We actually had a high profile client who on our website you can buy one of each, and she gave them both to her dogs, and the dogs destroyed the bacon one. And they didn't really touch the plain one. So like she reordered 4 more bacon ones like the next week. So that was actually really cool. Like the dogs, and can you blame them? You know, who doesn't love bacon, especially with dogs, you know?
Well, they're carnivore, so of course they smell that meat and they're like, "Hey, mine."
Yeah. So that's always been funny to get that feedback. Like, oh, they love the bacon ones, and they like the plain one too. like, oh, I'm sure they did.
I like that. And, one thing that we're kind of burying the lead here, and that is portions of the profit goes to Planet B Foundation, which is an amazing contribution that you're doing to make sure to help. Because going back to what your story started with, back in high school when you heard about this whole issue with bees, and
right.
So it's kind of cool how you brought it back.
Right, yeah. I thought I was leaving something out there for a second. I was like, no, there's another part of the story I'm forgetting. Yeah, so when it came time to, like, we were starting to actually start making money, I talked to Kim about it. I was like, okay, so I know you like helping people, and so how would you feel about if we did this? Because it directly relates to our business, and, it's something that needs help. And she absolutely loved it. When we were looking through possible organizations, we found the Planet B Foundation. Not only do they help rescue hives and keep their own hives as well, but some of the money some of the money they get donated to them is used to go to elementary schools and teach children the importance of bees.
That's cool.
I thought it was really cool because especially with all the education problems we're having now, I thought that was awesome that they were doing that. So like we went full straight ahead. And it just ended up, everything aligned so well to work with them. Because we didn't even think about this at the time. But just think about it. When you think dog treats and dog related products, when they donate to stuff, what do they donate to? Like the ASPCA or the Humane Society or something on that level.
Right.
I donate to the Planet B Foundation. That kind of makes us stick out a little bit. Because we're about dogs and we care about dogs. But also there's this other thing that we should shed more light on that doesn't get as much love as, our friendly little furry buddies over here.
Right. And, now, I don't know if you've seen it, and it's such a massive episode, but on Netflix, there's the little a multi-series doc on, called Rotten. And it was funny because the very first episode was about honey and bees. And it was amazing. So
I have not. I have to look into that.
Oh man, it's the very first episode, and it catches you right going, what? I think there's only like 7 episodes in that series in the first season, and that's all that they've produced so far. But man, that first one, I thought about when I was doing this whole research and getting ready for this interview. I thought about that because it is just, you'll sit there and watch that hour-long episode and just be like, wow. It is cool.
Rotten?
Rotten.
Rotten, you said?
Yeah, Rotten, Rotten. And it's a Netflix production. It was on the main part of Netflix when you first turn on, but I mean you could just search it out. And again, being the very first episode, it was just whoa. And you really start to get, you almost kind of think to yourself, oh my God, what can I do for bees? Because there's just such a problem, and you're doing something to actually help the cause. So that's kind of cool.
Thank you. Although I can't really take the credit. All I'm doing is giving some of our money to them They're the real heroes. They're the ones going out there actually rescuing the beehives. They go as far as to bring beehives to those schools, and then they have little beekeeper suits for the kids so that they can actually interact with the bees. So I appreciate you saying that. I'm not the one that wears the cape in this situation. I'm the guy in the back cheering them on.
Well, I mean, it's funny because our ecosystem is getting destroyed in so many different ways, and we got to do something. We got to make some kind of contribution to fix some of the problems that have happened, and you're doing so, which that really is an amazing thing. So, not only will our dogs have an amazing treat, but it's going to help that cause. So that's cool. That it's a win-win.
Which it helps overall with the world's food because you may or may not know this. Bees are directly responsible for 2/3 of the food that we eat.
Mm-hmm.
And so like forget about us. Like if we don't have enough food to if we can't grow all that food, we can't even feed our own dogs.
Right.
So it just helps everyone. It helps everything. It all comes back to you. Just gotta. Yeah, you get what I'm saying.
I do, and what's funny is that it all started back in high school with you, and it came full circle. Which I think that's almost kind of life. If you look at it, a lot of things do come full circle, but you can see it, which is kind of fun too.
Right, exactly. It's just like it was kind of going back to the whole I have the phone number for the office. Stuff like that. In high school, you remember being inspired by her, and you never thought of it beyond that. And look where you are now. You're basically her 20-minute little presentation has affected you this much. It's like the domino effect. You really don't know what you're going to come across in life that's going to really just make you take a turn.
Right. It's kind of funny how that works.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that your actual website says is it for dogs 12 months and up.
Right. I should explain that. So it's kind of the same idea that you wouldn't give caffeine to your toddler. You shouldn't give raw honey to a puppy, or even babies for that matter, because how it boosts your immune system for seasonal allergies is that it takes those pieces of pollen and distributes them in your body so they can create the antibodies that helps fight against it. When you're a baby or a puppy, your body is still trying to grow and try to figure out how it wants to do things.
Right.
So just like if you give a toddler caffeine when they're still growing, their body will become to be oh, we don't need to naturally make caffeine. This kid is getting it regularly from an outside source. So the body kind of reaches a point where it lowers or stops producing natural caffeine within its body. Same thing with pollen, or the antibodies for pollen that affect seasonal allergies. If we keep giving puppies and babies the raw honey, it'll think, oh, I don't have to worry about this. I'm going to keep getting it from an outside source. And it'll just stop production or slow it entirely, which is really bad for them as they get older because, they can have severe, allergies. And of course, when they get to, senior level, that can be life-threatening to a degree. So, even though the research that I have looked into, the market research and the actual science of it suggests that they should be okay by the time they're about 8 months. Just to be sure, we're suggesting 12 months or older.
Very smart. Yeah, precaution. Always err on the side of caution. That is always smart. Another interesting question that I saw was I gotta ask. It says can't ship to New Mexico. What is New Mexico doing wrong now?
So that was an oddly weird. So when we started, we were gonna aim for the top 5 states that had dogs, and then of course including Utah and Illinois because we both live here. And that very first year, kind of the trial year, we didn't even actually start selling until I think December. So basically we had no actual sales that year. And so okay, well, where did we actually get sales? Utah and Illinois. So all the other states, we just kind of decided to end, we're not going to ship to you anymore because we're just not going to renew the license for those states. But for some reason, New Mexico stipulated that, okay, in ending this license, you have to put on your website that you do no longer ship to New Mexico. And like, which I thought was just funny because I remember being on the phone with her. It was like, we're just not going to do it. Like, it's only going to allow addresses from Illinois and Utah. But she made it like, no, you still have to do it, or else we'll hit you with a violation fee or something. I was like, all right, whatever. I'll put it on the front page. It seems really odd. Like, we didn't get this from Missouri, we didn't get this from Kentucky, but sure, okay, whatever you want.
So strange.
Yeah, I don't know, but hey, whatever. We didn't get the hit with the fee, so whatever.
Yeah, that's what matters.
Yeah.
One of the only things I have in my questions, I was curious because I know it's not really feasible, but I was wondering, with cats, is there ever going to be a possibility to do something with cats, knowing that they are carnivore and digestion of honey is difficult for them? Is there ever any way of possibility of doing a cat treat?
So that is something we've been trying to work with, and we keep taking it on and off the table. The big issue with it is that cats don't process sugar as well as dogs do.
Right.
And honey naturally has a lot of sugar in it. So that's been the biggest issue, and without that sugar, we can't get it to this like lickable state because it's the sugar that makes it in that like form. So I don't know. Kim's been trying her best. She's really trying hard, but unfortunately, we just haven't gotten there yet. What we're planning to do after the peanut butter, and this could also apply to cats if she does it the right way. We wanted to do soft chews. So that way for like older senior dogs like Peanut who don't have teeth anymore or can't really bite her down hard anymore, they can still get treats just, in the form of like a really soft granola tossed lightly in our honey, So we were thinking like if we reduced how much honey and just with like bare bone sugar, like really, really careful with the sugar, maybe we could do something like that for cats. And so that's something she's kind of playing around with. But unfortunately, we just haven't found the secret sauce to make it work for cats yet in the form of a lickable treat.
Tricky little guys, aren't they, and gals?
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. And it's not because, we've definitely gotten asked about it because we've had plenty of people who want a cat version for their cats, but it's just, right now it would be too dangerous to give them what we already have.
Right. Well, I mean, it's always one of the things I love about evolution is science and how we can take something and we can learn. We can actually develop. And I mean, come on. Years back, would we have been able to do something like this? Probably not, because we wouldn't have had the science to actually substantiate it. Right. So I think it's kind of cool. I mean, I think we have a long way to go when it comes to knowing more than what we should know. Like we were talking before about technology and how with our parents, probably our moms and dads probably were teacher and grandparents. The biggest evolutionary science drop up in technology was a remote control to a TV. Now it's endless. But I think the same thing when it comes to nutrition. The same thing that comes down to all of this. You're on the way, and you're on the verge of actually making great discoveries. That's cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That being said, though, it's one day at a time.
Mm-hmm.
First, we got to deal with Illinois and that pesky paperwork. So.
Yeah, what is up with Illinois? I mean, seriously, it's one of the states that has just so many question marks. It's kind of bizarre.
Yeah, it really is. Like, I've seriously considered moving to Utah just because it would be so much easier. Because, again, Utah, got to give it up to Utah. They've been very helpful throughout this whole process. Whereas Illinois, case in point, we can't do the peanut butter yet because I sent them a letter in November to get it approved for this year. And we just got the letter 2 weeks ago saying, oh, you didn't date this one page, so we can't accept it. Also, now it's too late. So this is like, come on, are you serious? Like, it's been a nightmare. And I don't know what's worse, Shark Tank or Illinois right now in terms of stress.
I'm going to go with Illinois.
Yeah.
Just saying. Now, obviously you have an online option. Are you in stores?
We were in a shop for a little while. She hasn't reordered in a bit, but to be fair, she got our very first, basically our alpha prototype. And so I don't think that, we were still figuring out our packaging, so I don't think that helped very much. And even now, we're still making like final designs for our packaging, which has been more of like a money issue, just trying to get all the money to find a co-packer who can do all this for us within our budget. But aside from that little shop in Utah, we actually have talked to. Have you heard of Kreiser's at all?
No.
It's a chain that started in Chicago and now they're in every major city. I spoke to the CEO who was actually very interested in our treats because you don't really see honey in dog treats at all. And he gave us very specific things to fix about the packaging. So that's a discussion we have on the table right now. We just need to finalize our packaging with a co-packer, get everything up to speed, and we can talk to them again. I believe, if I remember correctly, we were discussing starting in one of his stores in a Chicago suburb and growing from there. And if it works in Chicago, then we'll start somewhere like Austin. I think that's the one. I know they have it in Seattle too. I forget exactly which cities, but so that's something we're working on. But our packaging very much screams homemade, and he wants it to look more professional. It's kind of what it comes down to.
Yeah, and I can completely understand getting everything, the lines on the details, everything, every little minute detail in a store. It's detail oriented. Every line has to be crisp. Everything has to be perfect. The font. It is a pain in the butt.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, let us know where anybody can actually go and purchase the product.
Oh yeah. Right now we can only ship to Illinois and Utah at the moment, unfortunately. We just got approved in New Jersey, so we can do Illinois, Utah, and New Jersey. California is still pending, so hopefully that'll go through soon.
Darn them Californians.
Well, that was so far that's been, we haven't heard anything back yet. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not like Illinois where it's just like, no, just cause, no.
It's almost sounding kind of like when I had CBD on. It's almost kind of like you're shipping drugs to our state. We can't have it. It's honey. Come on.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. It's crazy.
Wow.
And especially in Illinois, it actually works that we have to report how many tons of it we sell because they lump it together with animal feed laws. So, wow. How many tons did you sell this year? We sold 80 treats. That's maybe 10 pounds.
Wow.
It's ridiculous, but we have to put it in terms of tons. So, it's bonkers.
Wow. Who would ever have thought it was that complicated?
Yeah. No, and it's still, every day, it's still and now there's this. Great.
Now, are you still in contact with that girl from high school?
No, so funny enough, she, a lot of my classmates from that high school have led very interesting lives. She, last I heard, is actually teaching English in Russia right now. So it's been really funny to hear where we've all ended up because it was a weird high school to begin with. It was kind of like a magnet school for all of Illinois. You could live in anywhere within Illinois. You can go to this high school if you had the right grades or whatever. So it's been very interesting to keep up with certain people to see where they're at now. And that's where she is. She lives in Russia now, of all places.
You need to send her a message to say, you are to blame for this. My obsession with bees and honey is because of you. And look now I'm having issues with Illinois because of you. Blame all the downfall.
Good job, Sarah. You really did it.
Well, is there anything that we didn't cover that we should be covering?
No, I think we hit about everything. I tend to I kind of go off the rails sometimes, as you've seen by now, and I can kind of gloss over details, but I think we hit every major point.
I'm very much the same. I all of a sudden will be in conversation with something, topic, and then shiny red ball, and that's where I'm gone. I do it all the time. All right, well, Isaiah, thank you for being on the podcast. This is Chris Green. Have a pet-tastic week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay, gotta go in my bedtime.